All right, everyone. Well, welcome back to the Seahawks chat. So the one thing that I've been looking throughout the news is that there's just been a lot of trade rumors, notably about one person and one person particularly. I'm sure you already know who I'm probably going to talk about. But before I mention this person's name, I'm going to just address why we should look into trading before we address the person's name. So the position that we do need, there is an available spot because one of our players who we did pay a contract to, who is not living up to his expectations, is injured. What a surprise. But in any event, so what am I beating around the bush about? Okay, so I'm talking about Deforest Buckner. Everybody knows who he is. He is basically an all-pro defensive tackle, and word on the street is, since everyone wants to put on the rumor bug, he's biggest candidate is Seattle being traded to Seattle. Now, for me, I'm not a super big believer in these like huge, big media trade rumors BS, but I can give you my opinion on this. And not only would it even be beneficial for the Seahawks, if we do a trade like this, has it worked for us in the past, and all those things. So we're gonna go ahead and talk about it. So DeForest Buckner, he's 29 years old. He's 6'7" and 290 pounds. Now think about that. 6'7", 290 pounds. The last time you've seen a guy that tall and big is Calais Campbell. He was about 6'8", 290 pounds, maybe 300 pounds at a point. But he's just very big, very long. But if you've seen him on tape, like you actually see his highlights, he gets very low to the ground for how big he is in all of his positions. Like the guy goes from being 6'7" to nearly 5'5" in a stretch. And if you actually do focus on the way he plays his position, notably the defensive tackle position, he keeps his back really straight and has a very long presence, like a long stance. But he's still very low to the ground, and is able to jump up and put leverage on basically almost every guard that's shorter than him. The guy's 6'7". He's pushing around 6'4" guys, not by bullying them. No, he gets actual leverage and gets underneath and is able to cut through the offensive line and get to sack. And that's impressive, especially what I like the most about DeForest Buckner. He's not just a strict defensive tackle. He's very versatile. He'll go out in the side and become a defensive end. And, he has some decent speed for how big he is. He's been in some of his highlights. You've seen him tackle in the backfield, which is great. He's a willing player. There are some things I do want to mention. He is 29 years old. So he is in my opinion, he is getting on the older side of being a player. But he is getting into the right side of 30. This guy is beasting it. He is basically a rock solid like machine, well-oiled machine. It's kind of uncanny of how to describe DeForest Buckner. Now, in terms of trading to him for the Seahawks, I think it would be a big benefit for Seahawks defensive, not even just the defensive line, but defense as a whole. Because DeForest Buckner, if you're able to put him up and be our primary defensive tackle, and is able to already move and distract two offensive linemen out of 5, that's very good. Especially if you're running a 3-4, as I was looking, a 3-4 disguised flex play, because we like to switch back to cover zone all the time. But that's what I'm also trying to explain to you. He can single-handedly take out basically three defensive offensive linemen all at once. That's how talented he is. And not even just talent, he's that physically framed. He can literally bear hug all 3 of those guards if he really wanted to, and the center, the 2 guards and the center. And that's what, in my opinion, that's very, very valuable as a team, especially defensively. Because if you're able to have just one player hold 3 players back, that can open up a number of gaps for blitzes, schemes, stunts, all that. And let me tell you, Seattle does have some quick players on the backfield, especially defensively. We're really fast. I like that. Now, in terms of actually him being on the field, the guy's been rock solid. So in terms of durability, he's been on par with one of the most durable players. Like, I actually had to look back. The most significant injuries that he had were two ankle injuries in 2016, 2017, and they weren't even that big. They were somewhat minor. It is reported just recently, as I was doing the searches, that he does have a foot injury right now in camp, but it's not serious in any nature. I think it's just a disguise to, not, he doesn't really want to play because he's already fighting with Jim Irsay in terms of contract, and it's just disgusting because Jim Irsay, it's bad enough that he's already screwing Jonathan Taylor. It's another to screw if he's not wanting to pay Deforest Buckner, and these rumors are true that he just straight up wants to trade him because he doesn't want to pay him. That's dumb. Like, Deforest Buckner has been all pro for the last 4 years, basically. At least he's been in the top 100 in the NFL. Those are nods to his own players that he plays against that tell them that he's good. Especially 4 years running. Like, what is the Colts owner thinking? And I get it. Like, I get they're doing their whole like switch regime and whatever, but it's like, dude, I think he's a cornerstone piece of your defense, and you're just kind of letting him be talked about like you're just throwing him away. I would, if I was my player and I was, I would tell the head coach or anything like that, like the owner, like especially since he's so vocal on Twitter, from what I'm told, I would just straight up say, no, he's not for sale. But instead, there's all these rumors that I hear like left and right that he's already he's trying to get traded and everything's happening. So we'll see what happens. Now, let me give you some numbers. So in 2022, he had 74 tackles for 8 sacks, 2 forced fumbles, and 11 tackles for loss. That's very good, no matter who you are. That's defensive contributing numbers. And it makes sense because this guy is a force on the defense. I just told you, he literally can take out 3 players by himself. That's insane. Now, going back to 2021, he actually declined. I want to say in number production wise, I think he was just, I'm telling you, all these years, I wouldn't even call him decline. It's just, he deproduced. How about that? He deproduced with 68 tackles, 7 sacks, no forced fumbles, but 10 tackles for loss. So, afterwards, again in 2020, that's where those numbers ramped up. Again, he was 27 at the time, so he's still in his, I would still say prime. But right now, I still believe he's still in his prime. 9.5 sacks, 14 tackles for losses, 58 total tackles, and 2 forced fumbles. All those numbers are impressive, no matter the stretch of it. And you can keep going down until he was drafted in 2016, and he's always had good numbers when he's on the field. He's always produced. That's what I'm trying to explain, is that this guy would be worth trading for if the price was completely right. And I can see why Seattle did some restructuring, because they have $12 million saved up fresh. So there is some certain players they can get. And the thing is that right now I know his salary cap is hitting $21 million for the next 2 years. So what I was hearing, and I actually do think it's smart as well, is if we do trade and actually inherit the money and we are, going to be in the negative, I would say right then and there, I would do an extension and restructure his contract and add another 2 more years to it and then backload it. And then that would probably put us in the green, And I agree with that. I was watching that earlier in the video, and I actually do agree with that take. So, shout out to the person I was watching. I have to remember your dude. I'm sorry. But anyway, I do actually agree with that. Is that if we are able to obtain, sorry, it was Chat Sports. Sorry. So Chat Sports was one who mentioned that. I apologize. But anyways, they mentioned that we would sign them and extend them. I think that's a great idea. Absolutely, that's a great idea. Backload the contract, put it 2 more years, from there would be the NFL league money, as everyone said, always comes up, comes up. But not even that. There's going to be players that will eventually have their contracts out, and there will be much more free money, notably the safety position. So you see what I mean. So this would be a great opportunity for us to, if we did get DeForest Buckner in a trade, being able to use the extension, getting an extension, maybe 2 more years into that contract, maybe 3. I mean, the guy deserves it. We'll be able to put some money backloaded into those contracts, and we can afford him, especially for the next 2 years. That's great. That'll be 29 and 30. And just to mention the 30 mark, because some people can be kind of ageist in terms of 30. You're already old, especially when you came out and already are 7 years into the league. So that's what, 23. You came in 23. I'm gonna give you a list of some players at 30 that were good. Okay, and Ndamukong Suh's number 1. Brandon Mebane, Michael Bennett, Eric Waddle. Eric Waddle is secondary, I understand. But these are players that are on the defensive line and produced. And Chandler Jones. Not to mention people like James Harris. That's off my head. James Harrison as well. Cameron Jordan. He's Cameron Hayward. Both of the Camerons. They've always produced, even though they're already hitting past 30. So, to me, I have no... Oh, and the guy who reminds me the most of DeForest Buckner, Calais Campbell. Calais Campbell was great after 30. He still went onwards after 30. So that's something that gives me more reassurance, especially since DeForest has been completely healthy his entire career, basically. So I have no doubt that he could, in fact, stay healthy, since we have a rotating defensive line roster where he can stay afloat and then continue to produce many years for us. And again, in terms of him passing 30 and declining his play after 30, in my opinion, I don't feel like he will decline. I don't feel like he will decline even past 32 or 33. I think maybe he might hit the 34 mark and probably call it quits, which is still a very long time. That's about 5 more years, pushing 6 years if he really wanted to, 35, Like, if he really chose to stay 1 more year and he was still dominating, that's great. That's what I'm trying to explain to you, is that at 29, this is still probably prime years for him. Minimum 3 more years of prime, and which is probably enough time for the Seahawks to use his services for, especially to help us clean up on the defensive line. And since our defensive line would be able to have much more flexibility, if he takes up a lot, like at minimum he takes up 2 offensive players, it doesn't matter. Like, that's how dominant he is. At most, it's 3 offensive linemen. That's what I'm trying to say. And then say you do run a disguise 4-3 blitz when you're running on a 3-4 scheme. You run up, and then there you go. 1 gap's open because you have Buckner holding all 3 of the offensive line, and then you got Bobby rushing up. You got Brooks rushing up. You got Bush rushing up and hitting the quarterback. Getting the sack. That's perfect. Like, there's just so much good that I can see in us acquiring Buckner. And I will stand on being part of the trade for Buckner group. I really will, because there's much more positives than negatives. Now, here is the thing. We have to trade for him. What could we give up? Initially, for me, I think that they still want the first round pick. I think they're going to be aware that they probably won't get a first round pick, especially since they have to pay DeForest Buckner again, or some team has to pay DeForest Buckner again. So, what I'm proposing is that I was hearing on 12th Man Rising that they would give up Noah Fant and a third. All right, I understand that's actually kind of decent because Noah Fant is still rather expensive. But I don't want to lose Noah Fant. I understand this is his last year, this should be his last year coming in. But I don't want to lose him. I'd rather keep him. I think he would be more vital to our offense than the next player that I'm talking about. And this might hurt people. This might hurt a lot of fans because people really like this player. I do too. But I think he's just a little bit too expensive, and I truly believe the next man up is going to be just as good as his position, if not better. And that is Will Dissly. If we trade Will Dissly and give them a third-round pick, just like mentioned at 12th Man Rising, for Deforest Buckner and possibly a 6th or 7th round, because, you know, we like to get a little frisky and try to get a little extra, which, you know, they don't really... Teams don't mind that. They don't mind giving us a 6th-round pick for their best player along with it if we give them one of our best players in a 3rd or 2nd in some cases. But I strictly want it to be a 3rd. And here's the reason why I picked Will Dissly over Noah Fant. I think Will Dissly is a much safer option for the Colts in terms of Anthony Richardson. Like, Will Dissly has much more sure hands. Will Dissly is a better blocker, especially if Anthony Richardson's running around. Will Dissly can create space and run routes. He's very smooth with his feet. You guys know this. Will Dissly's very good as a tight end. But I think he's much more attractive to the Colts' offense than anything else, than Noah Fant for sure. My problem with Noah Fant is, yes, he's fast. Yes, he's able to run routes and do this, blah, blah, blah. He drops passes. But also, he's not a blocker. He's a receiver. And I think at this point in time, especially Anthony Richardson's case, since he's already going to be the starter, which I don't truly agree on. I rather, even though Minshew's not the best quarterback, if you're comparing them to, if that's the case, and Minshew can't beat him out, I would still start Minshew just for the fact that I don't want to risk Richardson fucking himself up on his first year like this. That's the only reason. You have to think reasonably as a quarterback. You know, I understand. And also, just seeing this first games, all the quarterbacks had jitters, but they weren't that good. You know, they need to learn over time the speed of the NFL and get better, especially once they come in. Look at Patrick Mahomes. They didn't throw him in. Not the first year. They used Alex Smith to wise him up, mature him more than he probably would have if he started in the league in the beginning and actually become what he is today. You know, this is why I truly think if we're going to trade for our tight ends, I want to trade for Will Dissly because I know the Colts would say yes more to Will Dissly if we show them his actual services. The problem with Will Dissly is that he always gets hurt. But that's kind of no different to kind of Noah Fant because Noah Fant's been hurt too. So it's like, you know, pick your poison. But all in all, I'm just saying this. Will Dissly would be a much better trade candidate to trade with a 3rd round pick for Deforest Buckner. Now, will some people be very torn about that? Yes. But will some people need to understand the compensation you're getting for trading Will Dissly? Or even, that's probably, because the only reason why I say Will Dissly is because he's going to be the one that would be able to relieve a lot of cap space for us. We're going to save about $5 million if we trade him. That's a lot of cap space compared to what Seattle's actually running. I was actually shocked that Seattle's spending a lot of money on their safeties. And I hate to say it, since Jamal Adams doesn't do much, that's a loss. And don't get me wrong, though. I love Jamal, and I want him to produce. And I hope he produces this year. But he's just not doing much. And Quandre Diggs, who is regarded as one of the best safeties in the league. But there's times he misses tackles. And it's annoying and frustrating. But does he deserve the pay? Yeah, because he is definitely a top 5, if not top 10 safeties in general in the league. So I like that we do have Quandre Diggs. You know, he brings a force, attitude, and a tone to our defense. I appreciate that. But he is going to need to watch out because there is going to be some secondary players that I see around the corner that might take his job once that contract's up. Because for sure, the contract going to go up soon. But in any event, those are some things that I wanted to mention. I also want to mention one more thing. The last time the Seahawks ever traded for a defensive lineman, notably even just a defensive lineman because Richardson was defensive end / defensive tackle. So in a way, it's kind of the same. It was Sheldon Richardson. We traded for Sheldon Richardson and a 7th round pick for Jermaine Kearse and a 2nd round pick. I don't know if y'all forgot that one, but we traded Jermaine Kearse and a 2nd round pick for Sheldon Richardson and a 7th. And you got to understand, Sheldon Richardson was good, when he started coming out of the league, but he slowed down significantly and gained a lot of weight. Did manage to maintain himself to stay in the league a little bit more, but then ended up retiring. And yeah, some people say it was a bad trade for Seattle. Some people say it was okay, but it wasn't a win. Is really what it was. It wasn't like it wasn't like us trading Quandre Diggs for a 5th round pick. Like, that was a bona fide steal. But in any event, I have faith that if we do trade for DeForest Buckner, I think this would be great for Seattle. This would be great for the team. This would be great for the organization. He will be closer to home. He was in Oregon. He could just go to Hawaii anytime he wants because it's literally right there. There's a lot of positivity to have DeForest Buckner come back to Seattle. And I think he would be embraced very well. In fact, jersey sales will go up. Everything would go crazy in Seattle if we had DeForest Buckner come back and be able to be the force that he is in Seattle. All right? So that's my opinion on DeForest Buckner. Do I support it? Absolutely. Do I want to do it? Absolutely. If Seahawks can find a way to trade away their any assets, really, almost, just not to a degree to a 1st round pick or something significantly overlapsing. Because don't get me wrong, DeForest Buckner is an elite player, but I don't want to break the bank for this player because you're only going to have him for the next 3 to 4 years. You're not going to have him for a decade. There's a big difference. It's not like a Charles Cross young player. He's not 21 years old. If he was like 25, 24, then this would be a much different story. And in some cases, I would put another 6 to 7, 10 years on him. Because he can probably go to 34, 35. That's where I'm expecting him to probably retire. And I'm saying probably because nowadays players can go longer because of the way the health is these days. But all in all, I really would like Buckner on our team. I want Buckner to be a force on our defense. Would I like to trade? Yes. Again, I am willing to sacrifice Will Dissly at most in terms of quality of player to give up for DeForest Buckner, especially in terms of his talent as well, because he doesn't miss games. Understand that. He don't miss games, especially when I was looking. All in all, guys, thank you very much. I do appreciate it. I hope you guys have a good one. I also wanted to mention that if you guys have seen my other channels, not my other I apologize, my other videos, and you guys have liked them or have shared them, I appreciate it. Thank you very much. I hope you guys are having a good time watching these. I try my best to not ramble too much and just get straight to the facts. I'm trying to get this production going, but again, it's just a little tough. So I am streaming. I am doing everything mainly off my phone. I have no problem admitting that, but fudge it. This is how I do it. So in any event, I hope you guys have fun. Please like and subscribe. You guys enjoy yourselves. Let's go ahead and kick the Cowboys' butts. And more importantly, go Hawks.